Hey, Lisa.
Hey, Bobby.
How's it going? Thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for the invite. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. And Gina, thank you too.
Hey. Kelly, you did such a good job yesterday at that, presenting on the foster information.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I was really inspired. I wish I could go back to Front Street and do it all over again.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I keep thinking Kristen's going to come back and it's going to be like the day that Kelly did the presentation and cried about structural racism in the director's club.
No, that was good.
Thank you.
Kelly, do you want to give it maybe a couple more minutes before kicking off?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Spencer, what's up, brother?
What's going on, guys? How you guys doing?
Good.
Happy Friday.
You know, just 2 hurricanes bearing down on us. We're living the dream, man.
Oh my God.
goodness.
Looking good. Can't wait.
I'm not sure if we would trade you for fire out here on the West Coast.
True.
I'm not sure which is worse, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, I distinctly remember asking as a little kid in school, what would happen if 2 hurricanes hit each other? And we might find out. That would be kind of fun.
Wow.
You're just very curious as a child, clearly.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
Yeah, we're actually, Kristen asked me to help put together agenda for the Monday COVID call. And I think I spoke with Gina. I think we're going to focus on disaster preparedness and what's going on the coast and what other shelters around the country can do to better prepare.
That's awesome.
Oh, really good idea.
So I'd be curious to know what kind of disaster results in the death of more animals. I would say it's fire, but I don't know what happens in a hurricane.
Right. I guess it matters like where it is and
just a lot of animals get displaced in hurricanes. But
yeah, that's honestly what it is. It's like, it's a similar COVID response, but you get so much animal abandonment and animal displacement. I remember when I was with best friends when Harvey hit, and then here for Irma, it was owned pets. Like we had a shelter full of owned pets and the owners just didn't come back for them.
I lived in Florida for over 20 years, and anytime hurricanes are great because you can count down to the exact minute that they're going to come into your neighborhood, right? So we had a lot of shelters already in place set up for not only just humans, but also human animals. And there were literally like cots laid out with people with their dogs with their crates beside them. And it worked out actually fairly well. And then animal control just manned those shelters to facilitate any problems. But, you know, people would prepare, especially like if the hurricane was hitting the East Coast, would just flood to the West Coast and then just already take shelter and everything that we had set up. So our shelter in Fort Myers, where I came from, Lee County, really didn't see a whole lot of other animals coming in during the hurricanes. It was pretty interesting.
This is so awesome. This is like an infomercial for Monday. I love it. It's like, stay tuned, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Monday morning. All right, Kelly, well, let's kick it off to you.
Sure. We are talking about customer service today. We have, Bobby, are you speaking to or no?
Well, I was supposed to speak on customer service and I said, what's the best level of customer service I can provide to this group? And I was like, I should probably bring the person that taught me about customer service. So that is exactly why Gina Knepp is here.
Awesome. And we have Gina Knepp and also Lisa Lee to speak with us about customer service. And Gina, do you want to take it away?
Sure. So my background is 911 police communications, and I spent 20 years and probably trained, I don't know, 1,000 or more 911 dispatchers in the state of California. It's a topic that I don't think we spend enough time on, regardless of industry. If I would make a recommendation to anyone, particularly anyone who is in charge on this call, that customer service needs to be on your agenda for every meeting, because you know what you talk about gets done. And I personally think that a culture of customer care starts at the very top of the organization. So whoever's in charge, if they're really shitty at customer service, everybody else will be too. Excuse my language, but I can't think of another way to say it. And it's got to be a mantra, right? It's who we are. It's what we do. I mean, our job is getting people from mad to glad, and that's not always easy. You know, we always say, well, it's the policy, or no, we can't. And no, we can't, but we can do this, should be the segue. You know, I'll let the conversation go on a little bit more, but it's a personal decision, I think, customer service is. And I always would say to folks, who do you love the most in your life? Like, maybe it's your grandma, maybe it's, I don't know who it is, but the person that you love the most, if they called for help or came to your shelter for help, how would you want them to be treated? You know, that whole notion of treat others as they want to be treated, well, that doesn't work, because, you know, we don't love all those people, but pick someone, you know. And I always ask myself too, that if I went somewhere for customer service, would I want to get me? Would I want to be the person who helped me? And it's an introspective question, but I think it leads to a lot of conversation in organizations, and it does make people stop and go, would I want to be the one that customer gets? So I don't have a lot to say, but I'm sure I will interject as we go through this.
Awesome. Do you guys have any questions? I actually have a question. How do you train staff on customer service? Like what is the best way to do that?
Well, I mean, I think it's super important. Hopefully you're having regular meetings with your team, and you're having continuous conversations about customer service and what good customer looks like, but more importantly, what it feels like. Because customers want a couple of things from us. They want us to make them feel important. Again, regardless of industry, I don't care what you're buying or shopping for or whatever, people want to be made to feel important. People want you to listen to them. You just got to listen. And sometimes you have to apologize, even if it's not your fault. And we get this kind of contempt of customer, and it's not just this industry, it's all industries. Well, you know, I know everything. Well, you know what? Maybe we don't. But I think it's a chronic, constant conversation. You know, we focus on adoptions and rescue and foster and transfer. The same amount of attention needs to be given to customer service. And I think it's kind of like pornography. You know it when you see it, when it's good, and you know when you see it and it's bad. And acknowledging and recognizing those great moments, I think Bobby can attest to this. We like vomited all the time to our staff via email and in person when a customer paid a compliment. That is the model that we need to be focusing on, not that bad customer service moment, because everybody's going to have one, right? But every single thank you, every single compliment, celebrate those things. So that is what people strive to be more like versus the other.
Yeah, and I think to even broaden this conversation, I know oftentimes when we think of customer service, we think of our customer service representatives, the people that are standing behind the desk interacting with our customers. But you know, there are so many different parts of customer service. And one of the things that we're really focusing on within the Haas model is field services and how we are able to work with our officers to really provide a better service and more service to our community. And the biggest pushback that we've heard is that is such a culture that is difficult for us to change, because whether it's ingrained in them, whether they're so disconnected because they're not always around us because they're in the field, it's one of those boulders up the mountains. And that's really one of the reasons why I wanted Lisa to be here. Not only is she amazing with community engagement, but she has really found a way to develop a relationship with the officers at her organization and be very customer service focused. So I'd love to give you the floor as well, Lisa, and then maybe tell us a little about yourself, your organization, and what makes you proud about it.
So hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Lee. I am with Guilford County Animal Services, which is in Greensboro, North Carolina. I am the community engagement manager here. I've been with Guilford County 3 years. Prior to that, I was in Lee County, Florida. It's interesting with me because I came from customer service. I owned a business, so I get that 100%. I also came from law enforcement, so I get the enforcement end of it. Since I came to Guilford County, I started as an animal control supervisor. Took over our intake for a bit while we made some changes, still in animal control. Then became the interim shelter manager, which included rescue and foster, back to animal control, and then to my current position in community engagement. So I've been able to be on every single department here at the shelter. I've been the one at the front desk handling those angry people. That animal control took my dog, the whole thing. The ones where down an intake, animal control took my dog and I followed the truck, you know, the whole thing with that. So what we did is a couple years ago, our shelter became extremely, almost to capacity, like with 560 animals here. And so we had to tell animal control, do not bring any more animals into the shelter. We just cannot house them. So what that means, unless the animals were sick, injured, or vicious, keep them out of the shelter. So now it's up to you to start working with the community. So if it's a healthy stray, take that animal home, find a way to work with the owner. If the, like in the old days, as you know, we have a lot of officers here that it's been probably 3/4 of our officers have been here 10 years or more. So it's really hard to teach an old dog new tricks, so to say. And they fight me and fight everybody every step of the way. Don't get me wrong with that. But when it came to that point, we said only sick, injured, or vicious, they were forced to start talking to people in the community. And instead of saying, hey, you know, put your dog on that truck and sign these surrender forms, or I'm going to give you a $2,000 fine, it came to, you know, well, we're going to give you 30 days. Is your animal current on rabies? We can do home rabies shots because our animal control officers are certified rabies vaccinators. So they start working with the community that way. Weren't happy about it. We're really not happy when we gave them scanners and taught them that now they had an RTO in the field. That was interesting in itself. But as they start, you know, start being force fed, you know, you missed a chip, you got to do it again, you know, we'll have to have a conversation about this. So they finally start getting to that point. And at that point, they really started listening a bit more to the community. And they're finding that the community, instead of being the hated animal control officers, are actually somebody who can understand them. So then we took it a step further. So we started using them for community outreach, just a little bit here and there. And then what we did is that we changed their uniforms. And you want to talk about not happy animal control officers, because forever they wore the same uniforms, black button downs, black BDUs, really try to look like law enforcement. But they're not. They're not sworn officers. They're animal control officers. So we changed their look and their logo to soft polo shirts, you know, navy blue polo shirts, BDUs, and had them continue to work more with the community. We have officers that love the new community engagement, really learning that they got a lot further talking to people starting at this level instead of like this level, a lot more compliance. We're finding that our owner surrenders are starting to slowly decrease. We're finding that definitely our intake is definitely increasing by that. And so then what we did after we changed uniforms, we took that the next step further. When I became the community engagement manager as a new position, we started doing boots on the ground. So coming from law enforcement, and you know, we're used to like doing sweeps, going out there, finding who didn't have rabies shots, writing those, you know, writing citations. It came to the point now where our officers would be selected. We would go boots on the ground, knocking on doors. Hey, we're just with animal services. What kind of animals do you have? How can we help you? No judgment. It was a no judgment zone, 100% no judgment zone. And they're really finding out that the community now looks at them in a different light and looks at them as a resource. So our officers now, it's amazing because we have, in Guilford, we have a collaboration of nonprofits that work with us. And we have a group called Break the Chain Kennel Crew, but they're the group that unchains dogs by donating, you know, 10 by 20 kennels and everything. So our officers are now empowered. So if they see an animal on a tether, they can say, hey, I'm going to turn you on to Break the Chain Kennel Crew. I'm going to work with you. As long as I know you're working with them, I'm going to just periodically check up. I know the dog's still on the chain because we've got an ordinance, anti-tethering ordinance, and I'm going to work with you on this. And the people are very grateful because, you know, there's a lot of different incomes here and everybody loves their pets. Nobody wants their pets taken from them. Nobody could afford to pay the impound fees to get them out because the dog was on a chain, even though they thought they were okay with, you know, a really bad dog house and maybe some water. So now what happens was our officers would empower them to, you know, contact Break the Chain. Break the Chain would come do the build, but now our officers, which never happened in the past, are there at the builds those days, helping build those fences, helping hold those dogs while the fences are being built. And these dogs are getting their kennels done, they're getting fully vetted, they're getting spay-neutered to be part of the program. And the officers are really seeing what a difference it is to provide customer resources, you know, customer service in the field. And what that translates to is the amount of angry customers that call animal control or used to, before pre-COVID, that would storm our doors saying, "Where's my dogs?" Or it's not like that anymore. And so customer service, like I try to tell the officers as a supervisor, and then when I was interim managers, that, animal welfare is emotional. It's not like customer service going to retail and buying a blouse or a dress for a dance or something. These people are emotional about their pets, as we all are, because we all have multiple pets at home. And then when they start to realize that, they get it. So now they find that most people just want to, first of all, are angry, upset about something, or upset about something. They just let them talk. They let them go on, let them talk. And then when they're done, like, okay, now how can we help you? So Guilford County has a spay neuter fund that a nonprofit manages for us. So now when animal control says, listen, I'm going to help you get this animal spay neutered. Not that I'm going to take your dog, put it on a truck. I'm going to write you, citations. Now they're going to say, I'm going to get your dog spay neutered. I'm going to do a home rabies shot for you. And do you need any pet food to get you through until your next paycheck or to your next whatever, to keep that pet in the home? And it's been really, really successful for us. Very successful. And so we find that customer service for Guilford County starts in the community, not at the shelter. And so once they get to the shelter, then it's so much easier to manage for us. So, and it's fun because I was telling Bobby that one of my cruelty investigators here, country guy, been around a long time, he was the naysayer from the very beginning. And this guy is like my best friend here. He does everything community outreach with me. We go to elementary schools. We talk to whether it's second graders. He's now part of the pet responsibility class that teaches fourth grade programs in Guilford County schools. Not only can he, let me tell you, this guy can back a trailer up anywhere. So when I need trailers being hauled for community events, whatever, he is right with me. We have done all the universities around here because we have A&T, the Aggies, we have UNCG, we've got High Point University, Wake Forest. He goes everywhere with me. And we educate and we talk to all the, whether they're preschoolers or whether they're adults or whether they're college kids. We get out there in the community all the time. And he is just phenomenal. And so we've translated this now as he's now my go-to rabies vaccinator. And we've been holding, so now when animal control's out in the field, we've been holding free rabies clinics. Like, hey, I'm not gonna give you a citation, but if I don't see you at the rabies clinic this Saturday, then I'm gonna come back and follow up with you. And they're like, oh, okay. And these people are coming to the rabies clinic now. So we really do find that customer service starts in the field with our field services. And we also find that the officers like to get out of the norm. I mean, we have our enforcers, don't get me wrong. And we were, my director and I were just laughing about, there's one in particular that we're going to suggest he do a little bit more community outreach with us. But we have everybody now saying, hey, can I help you on Saturday? Can I come to the market on Tuesday? Whatever we do, they want to be there and help. So really, really, truly, you really need to start with your field services. Field services is key to customer service.
Yeah.
And it goes a long way.
Thank you, Lisa. And I know one of the goals for Haas with a lot of our other shelters is we're going to have Lisa's team actually put together a presentation of the officers that have had those aha moments, that have been officers for many years, to talk about what that experience was. So that way it's a really relatable experience that they can share with other officers in our other shelters. So any questions from the group?
I don't have a question, Bobby, but something struck me as Lisa was talking. It's different in every jurisdiction. Some cities have a central call center, like a 311. Some people have a dispatcher who's taking those phone calls. But it is the person who takes the call from the community member that sets the tone for that responding officer. So how that telephone interaction goes either is great for that officer or really detrimental, because the customer can't distinguish between the two. Whoever took the call is the person coming to their house. And when we see that in police, fire, animal control. So if you have dispatchers, call takers that are taking those, we call them activities for your field services to respond to, it's really critical that they understand their role. And I would suggest, if you don't already, Lisa, those call takers go on ride-alongs with those officers so that they understand each other's worlds.
Well, it's kind of actually fortunate for us is that one of our ACOs who've been with us forever was going to retire, and we lost the dispatcher. So she is now one of our main dispatchers. And so it's wonderful because she not only knows what the officers prefer and like, but she also handles a lot of calls just over the phone instead of sending an officer, because she knows the calls. And we have 2 dispatchers, and the other dispatcher is very low key as well, and he does a great job. But you're exactly right. It sets that tone, because if somebody's angry on the phone and the dispatcher just cannot give them the proper customer service and listen to their concerns, by the time the officer gets out there, those people are angry and loaded for bear. Like, why didn't you come here? Why aren't you listening to my needs? But we are fortunate in that matter that our main dispatcher is an animal control officer, and she's phenomenal. And before she became our dispatcher, she was my main boots on the ground person who walked miles and miles and miles of neighborhoods with me, just knocking on doors and talking to people. So she gets it. And so that's very true. Your call center has to be top line customer service to set the tone for everything else.
A question for the group. Can any of you think of or recall some sort of customer interaction that is pretty traditional for your team to deal with that you're having trouble dealing with? Like what that kind of interaction would be, what the service that you unfortunately cannot provide that your clients are demanding? I think it would be cool to kind of put those experiences to hand with our experts here and see what their thoughts on them.
Dealing with homeless people is one of the toughest things our front desk people have to deal with, whether it's on the phone or when they come to the shelter. I'd love to say that they weren't suffering from addiction issues and major mental health issues, but that's typically why we have their animals, because they've been arrested and or what we call in Florida Baker acted, so they've had a psychiatric hold on them. And just this, I mean, we always offer to spay and neuter their animal and vaccinate them and return them back to them for free. We try to offer everything that we can, but even something as simple as microchipping ends up being a nightmare to try to educate them on, because of course the government wants to track them through their microchip and their animal. But I would say that's our toughest population by far, and it's almost a daily occurrence.
I'll jump in real quick for Erica. One thing we had a similar problem about 2 years ago, and literally put it in the ordinance that any animal that leaves our shelter gets a microchip. I don't care whether you want it or not. And that's just built in, and that's in the local ordinance. And so, not really for the customer service kind of conversation. We're not really solving that problem with the particular citizen, but we were having a similar problem with low income to no income folks. Baker acted constantly. We're getting your dog 6 or 7 times. Like, if we know it's your dog without a microchip, the dog's been here way too much, right? But so we basically put that in there essentially. Like, any animal that leaves, rabies shot, microchip has to happen before it leaves.
We do the same. It's been in our ordinance for a decade now, and
Yeah.
so we have to write them a citation if they don't consent to it. So, and because it's been considered surgery in
Do
the
they
state.
have to consent to it at that point if it's in the ordinance?
Yep, because it's considered surgery in the state of Florida.
Oh man.
We have we still do a huge homelessness issue in Sacramento, and some of it starts with changing our vernacular. They're not homeless people, they're people living or experiencing homelessness. And most of us and most of our staff are 3 paychecks away from living in our cars. And it's really easy, and I don't want to preach, it's really easy to judge. We're so good at that in this industry. But I think that most people, whether they're living in a tent or in their car or in a house, equally love their pets. And there is that handful of people in that community that, are experiencing awful mental health crises, addiction issues. But there is this segment of people in homelessness that are just like us. And I don't know how to say, how do we search out this compassion for what they're going through? And again, offering services all depends on how we say it. These are the things that we're going to do for your pet today, because we know you love Teddy. We're going to give him a free vaccination and a free microchip with your name on it. It's flipping our thinking. And it took Sacramento, we essentially, Front Street supported a human homeless shelter for, what was it, Bobby, almost 18 months?
18 months, yeah.
Yeah, a couple hundred people, 100 animals at every given moment. And we were successful in spaying and neutering. I would say 90% of those pets. Everybody got vaccinated, everybody got chipped. And the level of, it changed my thinking, the level of devotion and love that I saw for their pets. It was a big learning lesson for me. So I think, again, putting ourselves in a different set of shoes is super helpful.
Yeah, and to echo that, I think, and I served as the customer service manager under Gina, and many of the interactions that were escalated, I would have a lot of those conversations. And what we really talked about with our team is oftentimes, especially with people like you're saying are living in transitional situations or homeless, most of their interactions, especially with municipal agencies or government agencies, are punitive, or there is a disconnect in the humanization of the experience. And so something as simple as asking them, hey, how are you doing? How are you? Not making it about their pet initially. Obviously, we know there are so many times where people are walking in and they're so distraught that they only want to talk about their pet. But there is absolutely an opportunity to just engage with that individual and ask them something not related to their pet. Are you okay? Would you like some water? How far did you travel to get here? And allow them to feel empowered for the level of love they are putting into their animal. Because many of them, you're like, oh, you don't have a car or a home. You don't, how are you going to afford this pet? But some of them will walk 5 or 10 or 15 miles in the heat, right? Because this is their whole life. This is their whole world. And the look I have gotten from people when I said, I am so blown away that you walked 15 miles and took 2 buses to get your pet. Like, I wish we had more owners that were that invested. It totally changes their perception of you, your organization, and also their experience. And I feel like it is our responsibility to not only empower pet owners, but people as individuals. And I think the more that we do that, the more that you will also learn that although we may not know this or believe this, the sort of ecosystems or communities of people that are homeless communicate more than you would ever imagine. And they talk and they're friends and they meet up at dog parks. And the more that we can start planning that succeed, that we are different organizations, that we do look at people as human beings and that we are here to support them. Over the years, all of our experiences got better because they said, hey, I talked to Fred, you helped him out with his dog. I'm hoping that you can do the same for mine. And it's just, it's just like anything else. It takes practice, it takes patience. And over time, you will become a culture and organization that can deal with those issues.
Thank you. I'm not sure that, I think our staff is genuinely compassionate towards people that are experiencing homelessness. Most of the people that we deal with have been homeless for more than 10 years. These are people that are chronically homeless, and they travel around because we know where they've been for the most part. I don't know why other states ship them on buses to Tallahassee, but they do. Yeah, we've had a number of cruelty cases. So we have, I think, 5 or 6 homeless people that are chronically homeless on our animal abuser registry for criminal cruelty acts. They do a lot of breeding of animals. They do a lot of, these aren't your traditional people that are living on the street that love their pet. These are people that are also selling people's lost pets when they find them. Like, our interactions with those that are experiencing homelessness, obviously, we'll go above and beyond. It's much harder for those that it's like, oh, what month is it? This is a new pet for you, sort of thing. And it's just an animal passing in time. So I think that's where it's almost like we draw the line for some people and not others. But yeah, it's really hard to judge for those that we're constantly on the enforcement end of. And we've had several that we've had dangerous dog cases against their own dogs for sticking them on other people. But we deal with our homeless shelter a lot because they get in trouble very easily with their animals at the homeless shelter. And so the homeless shelter has had to crack down on that because they had so many animals there at one point.
Any of the instructors have thoughts on that?
It's a tough one. I don't want to segue, but one of the questions I get a lot is about adoptions to people experiencing homelessness. And I think that's really tough. I think for a lot of organizations to make that leap, but the ones that have, we've seen really great things. So I think those, as we're looking at the HOS movement and looking at customer service, like that's going to be part of it, and changing our policies and maybe just questioning everything that we've always restricted in the past, these blanket policies, and people experiencing homelessness is one of those. So it's all intertwined. It's really interesting. But thanks for bringing that up, Erica. I think that's a really important point.
I just want to say that we have adopted some homeless folks around here. Where our shelter is located on a very busy retail-oriented street. So there's homeless people on every single street corner. And we've all come to know them. And our animal control manager is very compassionate. He was an ACO. He's been here for 20 years. He's our manager now. So he knows a lot of these people, and they do talk, and they will tell him if there's any issues. And they will come to our rabies clinic if we say, hey, is your dog up to date on rabies? We've actually gave them free rabies in our last dog clinic. And it was funny. We had a dog here that was a staff favorite. He was hard to adopt out. Finally, we adopted out and found out he was adopted to the homeless people that we've seen. This dog was the fattest, happiest dog I've ever seen in my entire life. He was with his humans 24/7. Everybody, would stop by and give him dog food and dog treats while the humans were, doing their thing. And the humans just loved him. He had sweaters. He would be on, if it was cold, he'd be laying on cardboard. He'd have blankets on top of him. So we really didn't have much to say because we knew he was completely vaccinated. He was neutered. He was being overfed, but he was happy. So, that's just something that we always kept a thumb and a pulse on. So we find that our homeless people do tend to talk a lot because they're so close to the shelter. And if they do, it's really over the past couple of years, especially since our customer service has improved in field services, that they are now more comfortable with us to come with us if they do have a problem or if they see a problem. So it's kind of a give and take with them, but that's how we deal with our homeless people.
Well, I won't lie, I struggled as I managed the shelter to adopt to people in homelessness because it's such a huge barrier to getting housing. And Lisa, what you said is exactly true. There are people out there that are taking extraordinarily great care of their animals. So it was really a conundrum for me. I know that PetSmart Charities was really advocating for that. And now with HOS, that, could change the complexity of everything what we do. But it is a huge barrier to getting into housing. So it's like, I'm torn.
So I just want to say one other thing. We had a local councilwoman contact us, and she had someone in her community that was being evicted and had a boxer mix and 2 guinea pigs, and was trying to find suitable home, housing for her. Her relatives wouldn't take the animals in, so she was pretty much out on the street. So what we did is we had a local veterinarian who worked with us a lot when we have like strict quarantines and things. And she said, you know what? I'll take those dogs. And she kept those dogs and housed the dogs until that woman was able to find the dog and the guinea pigs, until that woman was able to secure housing. And the best part about it, that our community vet partner housed the animals at no cost. Never billed us, never billed the owner. The staff loved the guinea pigs. They spoiled them rotten until she could come and get them. And so that when she did pick up the animals, the dog was, completely vaccinated, had all his preventatives, and the guinea pigs were happy, and she was able to move into a home with those animals. So we did this as well with another person experiencing homelessness until she can get on her feet, where we sent them to one of our community partners. We're very fortunate to have really great boarding facilities around here who actually take a lot of our shelter dogs as fosters to try to give them a break from the shelter, and we'll keep them to help promote them and socialize them. And so one of our boarding partners did the same and was able to take 2 dogs for us for 2 weeks. And then the shelter picked up the bill for it at a special rate, obviously. But so we try to help those folks, and just there's other options out there. If you reach out to your community, you'd be surprised who else in your animal welfare area would be more than willing to help, especially with people facing evictions and people who love their pets, because that's a big thing. They'd rather sleep in their car than to take their animals someplace that wouldn't be wanted, and they're not going to give their animals up. So anything we can do to help them, we've been really trying to help them out.
Hey, Bobby, why don't you tell them the story about Robert and Maddie? Remember that?
Yeah, I mean, I can even share the post. So it was very similar to this situation. We had a gentleman. He and his partner were, I think he even had like a master's degree, right? One of them,
Mhm.
and they had two full-time jobs. One working as a handyman. Got evicted from where they were living. The guy just kicked them out, and they had a 90-pound pit bull. Was the dog adopted from us? Was
Yeah,
adopted.
like a year, 2 years prior.
Yeah, perfect. Right. So ideal family. Two very educated men, have a roof over their head, love their dog, no kids in the house. You know what? 18 months before, it was what we would call perfect home. Come back to us, needing to relinquish their dog, saying, "Hey, we've tried everything. We've exhausted all of our resources. We've tried friends and family. We can't get into housing because we have a bully breed dog that's 90 pounds. So for the last week, we've been sleeping on our car in the freezing cold weather, and the dog's literally been laying on us, keeping us warm." And so I think the story really resonated with us because it did really prove that point that many of us do look at some people as perfect and others not, and we're a few paychecks away from being that not so perfect person. And so we really just told the story, and we said, "Hey, is there a family? This was a dog we adopted, and this family needs help, and who can help?" And I think with our social media asked us to build a GoFundMe. I think we raised, what was it, like $5,000 in a day or something?
Yeah, $5,000 or $6,000. And then some lady in Arizona called me and she says, I have a house in West Sacramento that's furnished and they can have it for $1,000 a month. So we used that money that we raised and put food in the house and paid for what, I think 3 months plus a deposit. And what we really wanted to do when we told the story was to garner foster people that would help, like Lisa, you described, during that transition period. And we did a lot of that at Front Street. I mean, totally behind the scenes, breaking all the flipping rules. But I mean, there was one guy who needed to go into alcohol rehab for 90 days. He'd been sober for 30 years, I think. So we found a foster family to watch his dog while he went into rehab. And when he got out, they were reunited and life was good again. So I don't know. There's lots of stories out there. I think there's a lot of people that want to help. We just need to frame it in such a way that it makes sense for everybody. And I mean, I always say this, and it's almost becoming cliche. It's about both ends of the leash. It's not just the animal end that we have to worry about anymore.
Yeah, and we ended up sharing that story. So we ended up following along because they became like family, and through their situation, they allowed us to tell their story, and we turned it in as one of our holiday wishes for Front Street. And we won $50,000 for the shelter from that, and an additional $10,000 as a fan favorite story. So
Wow.
if you have the time, click that link there. It'll tell you the whole story.
That's so awesome. This is just kind of a little story, but when a couple of years ago, people started, some friends and I started a rescue, and there's this guy that was living under an overpass in like kind of a tent city, and he had a dog, and people kept coming up and being like, "Can you help them?" So we got in touch with him. It turns out he was he had PTSD from being in the military. He had like brain damage, I think, scars all over his head. And he was like really very uncomfortable indoors because of PTSD. But his dog, was with him all the time. And this dog had a better life than my dogs. He was with him all the time. He was like outside. He was, getting a lot of exercise. What was really neat was we took the dog to the vet and we got him update on vaccines. He had already had him neutered. But he was like, "So you guys have a rescue, do you need food?" And we were like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Everybody who comes by and sees us on the overpass gives us food. And I don't want to say no because that looks mean, but I have so much food." He literally filled my car twice with completely to the ceiling with food that people had given him. He was like, "Don't tell anybody, they'll think I've gotten soft." It's a neat guy.
Sharon, you got anything else to add? I know that Marcom customer service experience is a big part of your world. I'd love to hear from you as well.
Yeah, I'm just listening to all your wonderful stories because Yeah, I don't know. Nothing's coming to my mind at this very moment, but I will share. So I'm sure it will come to me. I don't have a story off the top of my head. I mean, I've worked in customer service since I was 12 years old, and at a vaudeville dinner theater, of all places. And they put me in charge of solving problems for customers. So I had to learn how to make everybody happy.
I have a question. If
It
you don't
explains
mind.
so much.
Oh,
Doesn't it? Go ahead.
yeah. For all the customer service experts out there, like one of the things I've seen is like you think you've done the onboarding, right? You've maybe hired the right people that are in sales or customer service or restaurant industries, but like it just seems like it never fails that a lot of organizations I walk into or I've worked at, the training's all good, and then 6 months later all of a sudden there's this the greetings and the culture is just completely shifted as people get busy. And like you just hear, like when someone comes in, it's like dogs are that way, cats are that way, don't put your fingers in the kennels, and like that's the barking order that you hear. And it's just like, how do you undo, you know, months or years of some of that? And I think Gina addressed it with regular meetings and keeping it on the agenda. It's not just an onboarding thing, but it just seems like it starts strong and then all of a sudden it just, kind of dwindles and it's pretty awful. But that initial greeting always gets me. It's like we can't greet people that are walking through our shelters that way.
Yeah, you need to, training is every day. It's not just a one-time thing. And I know when I worked in the restaurant world, because that can go crazy, but everything starts with the host. Whoever's the hostess or the host who seats the person, it's all uphill or all downhill right after that if it's not a good experience. But it was every day. And so a lot of times we would do amongst ourselves, and we would just ask each other, what was your best win? What was your, who's your most challenging table? And we would all help each other. Someone would call out a table number, and then everyone would have a reason to go through that table and do one thing that was unexpected for that customer or that guest. So I think there's ways to do that for whoever is coming in. It's the rapport amongst the team that helps in delivering overall customer service. It's not a one person. You'll always have that rock star who is just like perpetually perky all the time. And not everybody has that, but at the same time, that one can infuse others. And it's a conscious thing. Oh, Kathy, yes, the secret shopper. I pretend every single person is a secret shopper. I just know that is what happens.
Yeah.
Bobby, what do we used to say, that you never know when your heiress is going to walk through the front door?
Exactly.
Yeah, you never know. You never know when that's going to happen. And I think something else to always remember when we talk about customer service and taking care of people in leadership roles, right? It's also our job to make sure that we're taking care of the people that are taking care of others. And I think that's always sort of been my mantra, right? I don't manage a shelter. I help support people that run a shelter. And when you create a culture that really is customer service focused, and any interaction that you want to attempt to have should be a positive interaction, right? Even if it's from the accountability perspective, right? We talk about positive reinforcement for all of our pets, but do we always use positive reinforcement for our staff? And so when you do see a staff member, which, it's very easy for us to run half full or almost empty, because not only are our worlds chaotic, not only are we living through traumas with a lot of our experiences, not just, it's not just draining when you're getting yelled at by a customer. It's sometimes even more draining when someone's being super nice to you and they're displaced and you feel helpless and being able to help them. So for me, with any of my staff that I was overseeing, when I did see a situation where it was a peppy person that said dogs this way, cats that way, my interaction would be like, hey, are you okay? Right? Like, I see that your cup is low. Like, you normally are stepping up. Like, what's going on? How are the kids? How's the family? Is there anything else going on? And I think just going back to allowing people to be themselves and not just to be about the job, it really helps people refill their cups.
That's an excellent point. I saw Sarah posted a question, and this is something I did when I worked at the Science Center, is the administrative offices were always in the very back of the building, And, you know, the front of the building is where customer service is happening and guests are visiting and looking at all the exhibits. I would always be on the floor. Most people had no idea that I was actually the director of the department for visitor experience. I was just down there and I would observe, ask questions, and I always said how lucky we were that we actually got to do marketing and customer service and survey people just by talking to them every day. In most industries, you're, you know, in some building and you have no idea how people feel about your widget unless they call you and tell you. But I think working the floor, being out on being the front, that also lifts up your staff and your volunteers.
Yeah, I had an experience where I was working at a shelter, and just when you have that aha moment where you learn from others, where you're like, I never want to do that or be that. Like, I was working the front desk at intake, and we also had a clinic. And as we know, at intake, you're having sick, injured animals walking through all day. And we had 3 people, development team, fundraising team from the Ivory Tower drive up on a golf cart, and they were measuring. And I was like, what are all of you doing? And they're like, oh, you know, we decided we need to really spruce this place up. We really want to increase our customer service. So we're probably going to put a really nice rug here, like a nice, probably expensive rug. And so I asked them, I'm like, do you not realize that animals with parvo walk through here all the time? And you know what the response was? They're like, oh my gosh, you're totally right. We were about to ruin a perfectly good rug. And so I was like, I am never going to be that person.
Oh my God.
That got Sarah talking.
Okay. So, so I wanted to say, like, kind of along those lines, not Bobby's parvo rug story, but like demonstrating for people. When I was in PEMA, you know, we would always talk about this stuff, and we're telling folks, you know, at intake, like, make sure you're having conversations and you're getting to the root of what, you know, the reason is, and you're trying to find solutions. And one night we were closed, we just closed, and I was in intake, and there was like these transfer cages full of small dogs everywhere. And I was like, where did all these dogs come from? And they said, oh, you know, some guy just dropped them all off. He said they're all strays. And I was like, there's no way that this guy had, you know, like 20 small dogs that are strays. There's no chance. So I called him from the intake room with all the staff there and proceeded to have a conversation with him where he was like, yeah, well, I care for them, I feed them, blah, 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 blah. And proceeds to go ahead and like actually own or surrender them so they don't have to sit for a stray hold. And everyone was like, in awe that I had had this conversation. They were like, we asked him that. And so sometimes it's just literally demonstrating the way to ask people or the way to have a conversation, and not just telling them what to ask, but actually doing it for them. So they go, oh, got it. I see how what you said is different than what I said. So just taking time to actually do those things with them or in front of them or alongside of them makes a big difference, because you're all in leadership roles because you have skill sets and you want to help transfer those to your teams, but they're not usually quite there yet. So there you go.
Sarah, that's amazing. That's spot on, as Bobby said.
I mean, if you think about it, those of us that have children, how do our children learn best from us, right? Through modeling.
Mm-hmm.
We model the behavior. It's the same as employees. And I always really admired Bobby because he would just get out there front and center. You know, my office was right next to the front counter, regardless of the myriad of jobs I held in my life. It was always right where you could hear people. And when they did something great, you were there to congratulate them, thank them, or, you know, show everybody else how good it was. And when things went south, you were nearby to save them. And I think, you know, Bobby, you know, the ED having to take a golf cart to get to the front counter, I mean, that's deplorable in my opinion. Bobby knows where my office was.
That was her very kind PSA to prove that that wasn't her shelter that the golf cart was at.
Oh, God, that was not my shelter.
Right next
We did
door.
not have golf carts.
Well, aside from the parvo, I mean, some dogs don't eliminate on the outside of the building. You know, there was going to be a lot of shampooing going on.
It's just fun to really reminisce, right? And I think for those of us that have had the opportunity to really grow up in the industry and just experience a lot of the things that we did and grow, and so many of you, I mean, I learned from all of you and what you've learned through those experiences and just where we're going as far as an industry. And as Sarah said earlier, getting away from the we're here for the pets, not the people. It's just it's so inspiring for me, even being a part of not only these HOS calls, but these COVID calls, or these, I almost call these our Friday happy hours because it's always the same squad, you know, gabbing away. I just feel really lucky and privileged. And it just, as my feel good Friday is that I'm just grateful for all of you. And it's just a fun and exciting time to be in this industry, as crazy as that sounds.
Anybody have any other
Okay,
questions?
since there's a lull, I have one more thing. So there's I put a link up in the chat a little while back from the Jan Elster book, and I don't know if you guys have seen that, but there's all these exercises in that. So because Kristen's not here, I can use her. There's one in there that talks about rate. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like rank the level of importance of all these people that may walk into your shelter, and you go through and it's like the person picking up their pet and the governor of the town and, you know, all of these things. And then it goes on to explain that every single one of these people can potentially affect your reputation on social media. They can potentially be donating or leaving you a will or, you know, some benefit to you, that all of these people are actually should be treated equally, and how everyone in our organization, from the director all the way down, everyone had biases and said, oh, this person's way more important than this other person. And so I absolutely encourage you to take a look at that workbook and pull out some exercises for your team, because I think everyone has something to learn. None of us are the best that we can be. And it really, for us, it was an easy way to pull out quick 10-minute snippets to work into training.
That is so cool. I didn't even know that existed. Very neat.
Yeah, and you know, it's really dated. I think, well, over a decade, more than that.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that there isn't
why
anything.
it's not give it to everyone. Sorry, Gina, but that's why it wasn't like give it to everyone, but pull out pieces of it.
But you know, what's fascinating to me is that we don't have something contemporary in our industry that addresses customer service in the 21st century for animal welfare. Because I mean, those of us that are on this call are really progressive, but there's thousands of animal welfare people out there that are still living in the dark ages. And come on, Sharon, what are we going to do? We need to come up with this new massive animal welfare customer service training program. Let's do it.
Well, I already know if Dr. J was here, she'd be like, we need a working group for that.
No.
We need a working group for that. Yeah, no, I think, you know, I do work on the Marcom working group, and I'm leading up the content. So maybe there's something I can do.
Yeah. I mean, you know, traditionally we don't spend a lot of time talking about implicit bias in this industry, and a lot of it exists. Someone walks in the shelter, and the back of your brain goes to this place. I mean, mine did, still does sometimes. Just the awareness, the awareness about how much we judge, and how do we fix that, flip that. So it's happening. We'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it 5 o'clock somewhere? What time is it?
It totally is. It's 1:54. So who is the lucky bingo that is in the time zone? Well, that is East Coast,
That would be
Hurricane Central.
well,
Mountain.
actually in Quebec. Today.
In Quebec, there we go.
Yeah, so no hurricanes here, but it's 5 to 5.
Ah, there you go.
Same here.
Yeah, that East Coast. Anyone want to know about the vaudeville theater before you go? My mother was the oldest, we called her the oldest living cocktail waitress. And she used to work in the theater, and I had to dance, and I was terribly, terribly shy. And I had to get up, but I was in dance class and I danced. And so I would be in the girl numbers. It's the boo the villain, cheer the hero, kind of old fashioned. I don't know if anybody's old enough to know this on this call, but very old fashioned kind of live shows. And I would come out, I was the card girl. I'd have to open up each act, and my mother would heckle me. And I would say, "Oh, Mom." And she'd say, "I'm not your mother, I'm your sister." Everyone would laugh, and I would like scurry off the stage. I was terrified every time, but it was really fun. We met a lot of famous people like that. A lot of actors came through that area. It was in Central California, and it was an old movie set.
That's awesome.
But that was my customer service training. I mean, they literally said there was a customer complaining, and they'd say, "Oh, Sharon, go help them." Be okay, and whatever they needed, I'd fix it. It was pretty fun.
I don't know how you top that story for a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can.
Well, and I refused to go down in the girly numbers when the women danced. They were supposed to go into the audience and sit on the people's laps on the edges of the seat, the aisles, and kiss their heads and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, I'm not doing that. So one other gal, there was like 6 of us, and one other gal stayed on stage, and we danced. And then my mother would come down the aisle, and she always made sure they sat the person who was bald at that one pivotal seat. And she would go and she'd laugh, and she'd sit on their lap and kiss, reapplied her lipstick and a big forehead or top of the head of lipstick kisses. I'm like, oh no, I'm not doing that. But my mom would. She was probably the ultimate of customer service, and so that's really where I learned it. Was, she modeled for us, but then pretty much she would just say, "Oh, Sharon, you go handle that." So she would send me out, and I learned how to problem solve it, 12 years old.
Love it.
Yep.
Hey y'all.
Sorry. Go, Lucy, go. Yeah.
Hey. My name's Lucy. This is my first time at one of these, and I just thought it was on customer service, and it's my background before my cat slinging career with APA. I'm a cat adoption counselor currently. I've been with us with APA for a year, and I'm starting in with a working group on grassroots comms for Haas, and so I just wanted to kind of see, kind of the higher ups feedback and input and what y'all are kind of up to and everything. I was at the AmPA conference and stuff, and it was just kind of cool to see not only about like the animal care part, but like, finding humanity and empathy with, customers or clients or adopters or whatever, the human beings. And so it's just cool to be a part of this, and thanks for all of your tutelage and things and stuff. But yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
I hope you'll come back.
Yeah, so I just figured, why not?
We're here every Friday. That's what, as Bobby says.
Yeah, no,
it's our jam.
Oh, I'm down to jam. Yeah, especially with quarantine, you got nothing but free time. Learn some stuff, grow a little. Why not?
Yeah.
So thanks for having me.
I mean, honestly, it's the humans who drive the car, and that's really what my dog believes is why I exist, is so I can take him from point A to point B. And he loves sitting in the back seat, looking out the windows.
Lucy, you don't know this, but when I first started working at American Pets Alive, I don't think you knew that I was an employee, and your customer service was so good that I almost walked out with a cat that day. So you're awesome. Happy to have you.
Yeah, I honestly didn't know a lot of, no offense, and this isn't in a disrespectful way, actually, out of admiration and respect, I call you guys the Davenports. And so like, I didn't know who the Davenport people were. I just, like, there were just people coming in to visit. So just always like, hey, how's it going? Can I help you? Like whatever. And so, yeah, so my boss, Laura, she was like, oh, we got an email from Dr. J. And I was just like, okay, sure. I was like, I knew like the myth, but I never knew, like, I never met the legend, but apparently I did. And she's like, oh, somebody was wearing a volunteer shirt. And I didn't do laundry that day. So I had a volunteer shirt from a friend of mine. And so they thought I was a volunteer, but they're like, oh, they were super, she was super engaging and And I was just like, oh, that was Dr. J? Oh, wow. Okay, cool. So it was a compliment, but I'll make sure to clean my staff shirts more. Just be better about staying on top of my laundry. So yeah, so that was good. I'm glad. Yeah, every single person to me, we like when I started, it was a lot of catitude on the floor, and like that was, people are going through, APA, and they have to go through, the dog adoption station, and they get to the cattery, and there's a lot of catitude there, or there was, and just to kind of change that a little bit, because every single person, that comes through there could be there to like, hey, I'm fine with an incontinent cat, or I have, I want to get your longest stay out of here, that type of stuff. And lo and behold, that's actually how I started, was like, had a checklist of the longest stay cats there. And I was like, these are the top 10 I need to adopt out within the next 6 months. And it was just like, just kept on checking stuff off of that list. And it was just because every single time you're like, every person that's coming here wants a long stay cat. They're fine with giving fluids. They're fine with so yeah. And now training folks and kind of giving that same thing, and just every single person that comes to the door could be that like millionaire donor or that whatever, and just treating every single person with the same level of respect. So keep on going with that. So yeah, thanks again.
Well, I'll let you know, there's we had a big adoption event a couple 6 years ago, Maddie's Fund used to do. And to that same point that you said about Dr. J, our founder came to visit, and he was at the adoption. He actually found a dog that he wanted to adopt. It was a little miniature schnauzer. I feel really bad for the person who made him fill out, because they didn't know who he was. He doesn't say that's who he was. And they made him wait 2.5 hours because someone else was interested in the dog. Yeah, can you believe it? And they put every barrier in front of him. They put every barrier in front of him, and he refused. We were like, "Are you kidding?" Oh, it's almost like, "Do you know who that is?" But nobody said a word. And he said, "No, don't. I don't want special treatment." But he just looks like an average guy. It was pretty crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's just like that secret shopper thing, like.
Yeah, it could be Dave Duffield in your presence. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. And like, they're not, celebrity status as it's called, but like in the industry or in certain organizations, they are rock stars, and you're like, every single person you have to treat with that same.
Yeah.
You never know. They have like undercover boss show that I'm kind of addicted to.
There you go.
Same thing, so.
Gina, that's what you should have done, is dressed you up in undercover boss.
Bosh, yeah. I love that show, by the way. Great show.
Yeah, fake mustache and the whole thing on a wig,
Yeah. So I got to take off, but thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Customer service is a constant conversation.
Yes.
All right, take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
All right, have a wonderful weekend, guys. Bye.
Bye.